Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, we had a big primary. I think we did. Not a lot of voters turned out. We'll have the big stories of the week following these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, before we get into the subject matter, 16 years and counting, Pennsylvania Newsmakers on the air. Who would have thunk it when we started? I want to thank our viewers around the state and on WGAL. I want to thank you for making us, other than Meet the Press, the #2 Sunday morning talk show. And it's because you, our viewers, and great guests like we have on today. Talking about guests, let me go to a couple of them. We have Laura Olson with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, John Micek with the Allentown Morning Call, regulars on the program, and sitting here to my right, that's figuratively speaking, right? On the right is Keegan Gibson. He's the managing editor of Politics PA. Welcome all. All right, before we get into the business of the elections, Laura Olson, we had quite an amazing week politically, but we also had an unusual week judicially. A long-term lawmaker was convicted of multiple counts of public corruption. His name is Bill DeWeese. He represents Greene County and some other counties in western Pennsylvania, but there's some oddities in that. Take it away, Laura.
Sure. Bill DeWeese, a 35-year State House member, turned in his letter of resignation on Monday. At noon on Tuesday, he was no longer a member of the State House, and that afternoon he was sentenced to 2.5 to 5 years in prison for the charges you just talked about.
And what else happened on Tuesday evening?
Later Tuesday evening, well, all day Tuesday, 3,000 Greene County and surrounding area Democrats voted for Bill DeWeese to return to the State House for the upcoming legislative session. He will not be able to do so because he will be reporting to prison next month. He would be, he has said that he hopes that the conviction will be overturned on appeal, but convicted felons are not allowed to serve in the state
But John, he stays on the ballot, right?
He does.
That's an oddity, right?
It's one of the great things about Pennsylvania politics. You can go to jail and still stay on the ballot. I mean, there was a court decision allowing him to stay on. There's the potential now, though, because that seat is vacant, possibly, we were talking about this morning, a potential special election down there in the 50th Legislative District in Greene and Fayette counties to fill out the balance of his unexpired term.
And there'll be a lot of pressure, I guess, to get him off the ballot. Wouldn't you say so? The state party and others have said, you know.
Yeah, this, kind of makes the state party look bad and gives Republicans an easy punch to throw at them.
But it's such a heavily Democratic district. He wouldn't be the first lawmaker, by the way, elected after conviction in Pennsylvania.
And it's the end of an era. I mean,
that's true.
He went back home, and at Rohanna's restaurant in Waynesburg, he had another election night gathering, as he has for how many years now. And there were hugs for him. These people greeted him and hugged him, and his supporters were there for him. They still like him.
All right, let's start, Keegan. I want to turn with you. Turnout 20% of Pennsylvania voters, presidential election, Santorum's off the ballot. He still got almost 20% of the vote. What can you make of presidential contest? Anything worth noting? You know,
I guess 18% of Republicans thought they wanted to give Rick Santorum a pat on the back, say good job. We're proud of you, hometown guy, and maybe part of that 18% doesn't like Mitt Romney too much. Maybe they're not sold on him.
Yeah. Anybody else on that? You see, does this augur well for Republicans in the fall? I mean. Go ahead.
Well, Mitt Romney got about 58% of the vote, and so, I mean, there's 42% of Republicans, as Keegan was alluding to, said we'd really prefer somebody else, or just.
He still has, John, you've covered a lot of this. He still has some work to do, doesn't he?
He does. There's still that conservative base within the state that he's going to have to sell himself to. Those people are still, some of them split among Santorum, some of them split among Newt Gingrich, who's leaving the race next week. On the other hand, though, you have that core of sort of moderate Republicans in the Philadelphia suburbs, where there's quite a lot of them who might gravitate toward Romney. It's going to be an interesting race. The expectation is that President Obama is going to have to work hard here. It's not going to be the romp it was in 2008.
Do all of you agree Pennsylvania is going to be competitive? This could be a very close, not the 10-point romp. I'll start with you, yes or no?
Oh, definitely not a 10-point romp. I think it's going to be a 3 to 4 point state at the most.
You agree with that?
Absolutely.
You agree? Well, that'll give us all something to do anyway. If there's a 10-point
fingers crossed.
Yeah, if there's a 10-point romp, at any rate.
Obama folks were fired up. I mean, we saw there were canvassing stickers on doors in Midtown Harrisburg, and Barack
they wanted to
Obama
make
is
sure that
unopposed in the primary.
They wanted to make sure that they didn't have like the protest vote, people voting, writing in names, or
I was getting text alerts. I mean, I'm still on their text and email list from '08 and getting text alerts throughout the day. Make sure you go out and vote for the president. I mean, they're very mobilized here. They're not taking it for granted.
All right, well, let's run to a break. When we come back, we have to talk about the Senate Republican primary. The winner, Tom Smith, he'll get to run against Bob Casey. What a contest that was. As I put it, the race was not maybe who's the most conservative, but who's the least democratic. We'll let our guests weigh into that after we pay some bills.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by BetterSaferRoads.com. To voice your support for safer highways and less traffic congestion, visit BetterSaferRoads.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program. We're chatting with some of the state's leading journalists. We now figured out that we're going to have a competitive presidential race next year. Let's talk, not arguably, one of the more fascinating races, John Micek, was the Republican nomination for the United States Senate. 5 candidates. I joked and said, who's the least Democratic? Take that and run with it.
Yeah, exciting is kind of relative in this race. I mean, it was a bit of a snoozer. But I mean, there's dueling throughout the campaign between Tom Smith, a coal baron from Armstrong County, and Steve Welch, this entrepreneur from Chester. Mr. Smith had a long history as a Democrat. Mr. Welch, in 2008, cast a protest vote for Barack Obama. He made a donation in 2006 to former Congressman Joe Sestak, which drove Republican activists in the Philly burbs just mental. And they spent most of the time sparring back and forth. And literally, Keegan probably attest to this, getting daily emails saying, he's more Democratic. No, he's more Democratic. And
that's what I said.
Who you voted for in this past Democratic primary?
Who's the least go ahead, pick it up. Who's the least Democratic? That was sort of what they were arguing about.
As you can imagine, it depends on who you ask. So Tom Smith was a Democrat for 42 years, but he says he's one of those Western PA Democrats, and he'd given over $250,000 to Republican candidates and causes over his lifetime. So that was sort of his safety. Whereas Steve Welch was a Republican for life until 2005. He switched to the Democratic Party, supported Sestak, voted for Obama in the primary. He says he voted for McCain in the general, and then switched back in 2009, and he ran for Congress twice.
Well, here's my question. When you take a look at Welch, he says he left the Republican Party in 2005 because it was spending too much. What does he think the Democrats do if no, right? I mean, isn't that what he said?
Basically, that's a candidate trying to look after his Achilles heel and not able to do so, not being able to pull it out.
Good point. All right, Laura.
Well, it didn't work enough, apparently, for Steve Welch, because he came in third on Tuesday.
Now, I have to ask you this question. Governor Corbett endorsed him. There are questions about how much of his heft he threw behind it, whether he campaigned enough, raised enough money. Some Republicans are saying, no one will remember this doesn't matter. But he did sort of force the Republican Party to take, go ahead.
The heft we saw was in February at the Republican State Committee, where Tom Corbett was literally taking state committee members aside and saying, you should vote for Steve Welch tomorrow. We'd like to give him the endorsement. It was fairly heavy-handed, but after that, we didn't see anything else from the governor. That was pretty much where his support for
that was sort of the central feature, right? That he didn't go out and do much after
he held 2 fundraisers for him. 2 fundraisers for Welch. One out east, one in the west, maybe one more. Brian Nutt, his politics guy, was saying. So maybe 3 for Welch, using a mailer for the statewide slate and robocalls in the final week. And the way it was explained to me is that Corbett basically did this. He'd assembled this slate of candidates. He had John Marr and Diana Erie Vaughn out west for treasurer and auditor general. Right. Hopscotch across the state to Cumberland County. You've got Dave Freed for attorney general.
So we
now you need to go somewhere out east. Well, who you got? You got Welch, and that's where a lot of Republican voters are. Unfortunately, Welch had those issues with the suburban chairman, and there were troubles, in fact, setting up fundraisers for him in Delaware and Chester County. I mean, they said they would go along with the endorsement, but when it came down to it, they looked after delegates, they looked after their local people, and they looked after Dominic Pileggi.
The deeper story behind that is that Governor Corbett, way early in the process, there were two gentlemen running for Attorney General, Dave Freed from Cumberland County, Senator Rafferty from Montgomery County.
And Rafferty drops out, is that correct?
That's right. Drops out at behest of the governor. Basically, the governor wants Dave Freed to be the candidate. So he gets Rafferty out. He pushes him out. He gets all the Southeast chairmen to stop backing him. But Corbett says, I want to throw you guys a bone. I want to make up for it. So I'm going to support your guy, Steve Welch, for Senate, except Steve Welch wasn't their guy. As John noted, he had sort of tenuous relationship with some of the chairmen.
But all in all, I mean, maybe some of the Republican strategists are right. In the long run, it's not going to make a big difference in terms of,
It's more interesting in how it shows how Governor Corbett is getting involved or not getting involved in state politics. He's kind of getting involved at the beginning, and then whether or not he carries things through.
My sense is that John, let me ask you this question. He's been a career prosecutor. I don't know that the politics thing is that comfortable for him. I mean, you've all interviewed him. I've interviewed him. I just get the sense that, he would prefer not to engage in this, or am I wrong?
I mean, those of us who cover him know he's very managerial. He's very CEO-like. I think he likes delegating. I think that portion of the job. I think he does politics because he has to do politics. I mean,
that's my sense.
You think about it, Terry. I mean, like, governors traditionally are the heads of the party.
Right.
But you cast him against, say, the last two really strong Republican figures in the state.
Who love politics.
Who love politics. Tom Ridge and Rick Santorum, who are political animals through and through, and raised scads of money, and were very activist on behalf of the party.
And Governor Rendell.
Governor Rendell.
Governor Rendell. He would go out and campaign for anybody, right?
That's right. That's exactly right,
He still was this time around.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, that didn't work so well for some of the candidates.
You look at Tom Corbett, it's a real contrast between all three of those figures. He does politics.
It's
different.
Yeah, it's not good or bad.
And he does what he does.
Yeah, he's a former prosecutor. I don't know that he has this tremendous comfort level, and I don't think that's necessarily a criticism. It's just an observation that he just may not be as comfortable doing that, right?
On the other hand, like Senator Toomey was actually pretty helpful.
Yeah, Pat Toomey,
maybe we'll see Republican candidates looking to him for his support more than they're looking to the governor.
Yeah, that's true. All right, well, look, let's run to a break, and when we come back, I want to talk about, we'll switch parties and go the Attorney General race on the Democratic side, low-key. If John thought the Republican race was low-key, how about this? But I'm telling you, there's some very interesting dimensions to this. The Attorney General's race, 3 of the last 4 Attorneys General have run for governor, and one of them has won. So whenever we're talking, am I right about that? Whenever we talk about Attorneys General, we got to put them right up there with major players in the state. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education, 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, we're going to turn to this Attorney General's race in the state is really unusual, Keegan. You've got all sorts of things going on. Kathleen Kane wins, not overwhelmingly, 5 or 6 points, I think, when the final numbers are out, over Patrick Murphy, former congressman, kind of a politician type. Talk about the 2 or 3 things that really mattered in the Attorney General's race.
I think you can kind of sum that race down to 2 letters, TV.
TV, okay.
Kathleen Kane had a clear message. I'm a prosecutor. I've tried 3,000 cases. At the end of the day, the average voter, when they think about the office of Attorney General, that's what they think of. So I think she made that case better on TV, where most of the battle was fought. Another thing is, being a woman running statewide in a race where, the average voter doesn't know either candidate until the last couple of, minutes.
Gender
in a Democratic primary, I would say definitely. Yeah, in fact, she emphasized that in her campaign ad. Her ad emphasized that she would be the first female elected Attorney General.
Yeah. So. You know what? Some of the national considerations come into play here, John Micek. Look at all the debate over the national health care bill and federal policy relating to women and contraceptives. I mean, I think a lot of women Democrats in particular had a heightened sensitivity to that issue, and plus, Old Boys Network up here in Harrisburg.
Yeah.
I mean, let's put some women up here. Go ahead.
If you paid attention to the first couple of months of the campaign, it was almost like they were running for governor, because I mean that was really where the focus was. Both Kane and Murphy talked a lot about this now stalled mandatory ultrasound bill. Yeah. And I was at a stop with her in Bucks County in front of a group of Democratic women, and she was concentrating on this and hammering this home, and they were going crazy for it. It really resonated with voters. And I mean, a female candidate in a statewide ticket, it's cynical to say, but it gets you 3 or 4 more percentage points than you would have otherwise.
No woman attorney general in the history of the state. I mean, that's elected. I want to say that. I was coming back and saying elected. I was getting there. Thank you for the help, Laura. But there was also this business where Patrick Murphy was just another politician who was going to use the Attorney General's post as a jumping off place to run for the governorship, and she wasn't. I'm a career prosecutor. You can count on me to do my job.
I mean, they laid out very different paths. And Patrick Murphy made no bones about the fact that that's how he was outlining the office. He wanted to use it as a bully pulpit. He said that we need to stand up for these middle-class families. We need to protect them. It needs to be a louder, more aggressive office. Yep. And when you looked at the map on Tuesday night, he won 4 or 5 counties, all surrounding his native Bucks County. She won the entire rest of the state. And
and that may be that, we're allowed to be a little subjective here. We can't be partisan, but I think Keegan has a point. Her television ads were I thought very effective. I thought Tom Smith's, not to jump back, I thought his ads were. So television in this state really does matter, as John and I have talked about over the years. I want to go to one other point, and that's if she wins the race, and I think this is going to be, without doubt, I think she has a chance to win. We're not predicting who wins and loses here, but Tom Corbett, first Democrat, all this business. Hasn't she said that she'll look into how the investigation was conducted in the Jerry Sandusky matter at Penn State?
One of Kathleen Kane's strongest points, especially early on, was just her familiarity and experience trying child predators. So the Penn State case plays right to her strength. And we said earlier that Corbett is really focused on the Attorney General race, and that's because if a Democrat is elected to that office, all of a sudden, for the first time in 30 years, Democratic workers can look through those files. They can go over Bonus Gate, see who was investigated, see who got a free pass, see what happened in the Sandusky matter, and that's something that really worries and should worry any Republican.
Yeah, we're going to come back and have some subsequent shows, particularly in the fall, get into that subject matter a bit. All right. Final segment coming up. We're going to take a look at a couple of the big congressional races. There wasn't a lot of competition there, but there were 2 races on the Democratic side that produced some interesting results. We'll take that up after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, a couple of big congressional races. Laura, I think I'm back to you. Let's talk first of all about Kritz Altmaier out in the West. The Republicans who controlled the process forced 2 Democrats to run against each other. Big surprise out there. Mark Kritz defeats Jason Altmaier, but Altmaier has 2/3 of the district, of the new district, were his old constituents. What happened out there?
On election night, after he had declared victory, Kritz said, I looked at this district when it was drawn, and I was upset. I was sad. I thought I was going to lose. And the voters in Cambria and Somerset County came out in force for him, and they were able to overcome the massive Altmaier tallies out in the rest of the district.
The other aspect here was, boy, there was a huge pressure on the unions to deliver. I mean, was it 20? Did I read something like 20? We don't have to be exactly correct. Something like 20 unions endorsed.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Basically, every major union in the state and the district endorsed Kritz, and the pressure was on. I think they made something like 3,000 calls and 10,000 door knocks. And basically, they got double the voter turnout in Kritz's part of the district versus Altmaier's, which is definitely a good way to show that you can still flex your muscles.
And that's strong union country. I mean, if you want to have a place where, other than the city of Philadelphia, and maybe some parts of Lackawanna and Luzerne, could you imagine that's out where your newspaper, of course, cover unions really strong. Altmaier didn't seem to have the passion. Is that fair? A lot.
Well, and he had a problem early on with his ballot petitions. That ended up going into a courtroom to be decided whether some of these petitions were valid. He almost got thrown off the ballot. In the end, he stayed on, but it was an early warning sign that there were issues with his organization.
All right, John, the other one, Tim Holden, another redistricted member of Congress, shifted his district from the Susquehanna Valley, South Central PA, up to the Northeast, Scranton, and a good part of Luzerne County, defeated by Matt Cartwright, a prominent lawyer from Scranton. Give us your brief version of that. 10-term
incumbent Tim Holden, who just a decade ago was redistricted into the 17th district in another sort of steel cage match, lost by 15 points to Matt Cartwright in a district where he had more than 75% of it was new territory.
Right.
Theoretically, this was supposed to work. He would come down, he'd go up into Scranton, heavily Democratic territory, come down into Easton in the Lehigh Valley, where my newspaper is. It was supposed to work. It just didn't. There were so many new people for him to meet. The introductory ad was a little bit on the stale side. There was some anti-incumbent sentiment in the Northeast as well. A couple of Democratic House members up there got knocked off. That may have led into the race as well. And there was just a general sentiment that he didn't run the best campaign in the world.
The other aspect of this is the old district. I think it was something like 4% Republican. The old district. So, in other words, Holden could be a blue dog, a moderate conservative Democrat in that caucus in Harrisburg. In Washington, and he didn't vote for the health care bill. That became a big issue up there. The new district is something like 20% Democratic. And when you get to Lackawanna and Luzerne, the Democrats are a lot different than the Republicans are in Dauphin and Lebanon and Terry. Go ahead.
Yeah, Holden frustrated Republicans for years. They tried to beat him. John mentioned he beat Representative Geekus in 2002. They just couldn't find a way to beat him. I guess they found a way this time. Another element of that race that I think bears mention is the fact that outside groups and PACs put about $500,000 against Holden. They spent basically, so his opponent, Cartwright, could spend all of his money going positive and introducing himself. Holden had to not only introduce himself to 80% new constituents, but also try to attack Cartwright. And, it was about a 3-to-2 spending difference against Holden.
And if you look at where those messages were being targeted, it was the League of Conservation Voters coming in, it was environmental activists in fracking country, in shale country, whacking Holden for support for that stuff.
John gets the last word. All right, a great update. Thanks for coming on the program, and thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.